Great. So we are live. Thank you all for attending. We'll start on time, and people can come as we move on. We're excited to have you, Stella Provelengiou, from Wikifarmer, and we co-organized this event in collaboration with the Global Plant Council, and Isabel Mendoza is helping me coordinate this session. So as you've seen, the main topic for today is the role of biodiversity or diversity in general in shaping the future of agriculture. Please stay until the end because we'll have some time to answer your questions with our participants. So when we speak about biodiversity, the first thing that usually comes to people's mind is to be like a synonym for resilience, sustainability, and that is environmentally friendly. But usually it's quite common to have more negative feelings about it, that it's a quite complex system to implement in practice and maybe doesn't go hand by hand with profit, so maybe lower yields. But today, if you stay to hear all three presentations, you will see that that's not the case. We know that biodiversity in agriculture come in three levels. So at the ecosystem level, the general one, we have the crop, we have the animals, the pests, we have the organisms in the soil, so everything in the agro-ecosystem. But we can also have diversity in our crops in the field, either with crop rotation or intercropping, as we will see today. And last but not least, at the genetic level, so by the diversity of the genes that we have for creating our varieties. And today we'll have the input from our three amazing presenters. So we'll start with Roy Michielsen from the Netherlands. He's a controller and expert in strip cropping for earth. We'll continue with Isabel Balyejusa Kizito, associate professor in plant breeding from Uganda Christian University. And last but not least, we'll have Janny van Beem, a plant breeder with scientific expertise in biodiversity conservation from CropTrust. And as I mentioned, at the end, we'll have our Q&A session. Throughout the presentations, you can have the chance to send us your questions. Please, to do that, use the Q&A tool here at the bottom of your screen and post your questions. To help us in the process, please add for which presenter your question is, or if it's general, you can just leave it up to us. And of course, you can use the chat to say a hello if you wish, but please put all your questions in the Q&A. We're also live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be available for later on for everybody to access through our YouTube channel from Wikifarmer and the Global Plant Council. I'm excited to have this fourth webinar with the Global Plant Council. As you can see, the past three are focusing on sustainable practices and, of course, breeding technologies and gene editing. And you can access them again in our YouTube channels. Usually after the webinars, we might send you a form to give us extra ideas of what you would wish to see as the next topic in this series of webinars. And with no extra time to spare, I will start giving a very brief overview about Wikifarmer, and then I will pass to Isabel to present the Global Plant Council. So for you that doesn't know, Wikifarmer is an open access knowledge platform for the agri-food sector, but it's much more. So it started with our library where farmers and other agri-food stakeholders can find useful information in the format of videos and articles. Everything is open access, so it's free to access, and it's in 17 languages it's available. Recently, we started our academy, where you can find online courses relevant to the agri-food sector. And of course, our marketplace that gives a chance to farmers to access a global market and link with possible buyers. So it's a B2B marketplace. Some interesting numbers for you to know. So in this effort that we try to disseminate the knowledge in the agri-food sector, we have collaborated with over 320 contributing authors, experts in the field, created more than 1,700 original articles in 17 language versions. We have collaborated with 57 partners, and more than 30 million people have visited our platform and read our content, coming from literally every possible country that you can imagine. And we, of course, are lucky enough to have more than 18,000 registered farmers in our marketplace. And as I mentioned, the academies it's quite young. I think it's just 1 year old now. This online school aims to provide complete educational courses that will empower the professionals of the sector and help cultivate more efficiently and sustainably. There is a variation of courses, around 4 to 5 hours, and you can access them online. And until tomorrow, we also have a discount coupon, so the WikiLearn24. You can put it in the checkout and have access to all our courses for 29 euros. So if you're interested, I can share it also in the chat and you can use it until tomorrow. Of course, we have other interesting projects running at this moment. We facilitate the dissemination of research results in collaboration with researchers and academics. So please feel free to contact me to gain more information about that. And another interesting project that we're running with academics and students to give them the chance to publish their own work online and gain new skills with content creation and reinforce their CV. So also reach us to learn more information about this project too. And here is our email, so library, Wikifarmer, and you can follow us on our social media. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar. Isabel, back to you.
Thank you, Stella. That was great. Very interesting, everything that Wikifarmer is doing currently. Some of the things I didn't know. Yeah, that means that we haven't been speaking a lot, Stella. So that's a warning for us. So thank you so much for being here and spending your time, or deciding to spend your time with our webinar that we are hosting together with Wikifarmer. Just a brief reminder that we will be recording this webinar. So just aware that the recording is in progress. And just a quick reminder of the Global Plant Council, what we do and what we offer for any enthusiast on plant science around the globe. So the Global Plant Council is a global coalition of plant science organizations. That means that our members are organizations such as plant science research centers, universities, or professional societies around the globe. Currently have over 25 members as you can all over the globe. And we work to raise awareness about the importance of plant science for society. So most of our members are scientists. Also, we aim to reach beyond them to other plant science enthusiasts and the society as a whole. So we work building a community and a sense of community for said plant scientists and speaking on a united voice and being a voice of reference for plant science and plant scientists at the global arena on policy matters and any other matter that could be. So how we do this, our main cornerstone is our website. Many of our activities, but not only, are online. And if you want to know what we do at any given point, just visit our website there and visit our section for activities. The events that we highlight there are mainly the ones that are promoted by our own members, but we also promote any plant science related event that we find of interest. Just drop me a line into my email or any other communication channel that we have open. We are present in in almost all main social media platforms. But we have also a couple of other means of contacting us, a couple of emails and our newsletter. So one of our main activities is the series of webinars. Some of them are collaborations, such as this one with Wikifarmer, but we have also set up other kinds of collaborations, such as the one that we have ongoing with the International Working Group for Safe Cassava, that in fact we will host another webinar in a couple of weeks on the 25th of November. Or any other organization that we think of could be of interest to our audience or for society, and that has also this plant science tune to it. So what else? Just very briefly, we showcased in our website, ideally daily, the latest plant research that is going around. We publish our news section about it. We also are the host for the Early Career Researchers International Network, where we help early career researchers showcase their work in our blog, or find a new job, network, or find the best suitable grant for their career. And of course, we also issue policy and position statements from the perspective of the plant science community. But as I said, please visit our website and you will know and will be completely up to date of what we do. Drop me a line. This is my email, the one that is shown here in the slide. Or you can also contact us or being informed about our activities in all our social media platforms that are here as well. So that's all from my side, and I think we should go now to the speakers. First one, I will like to Stella, do you want to take the floor and introduce Roy?
Of course, it's my pleasure. So Roy is an amazing expert working with intercropping. He's an agricultural professional with deep expertise in organic farming and agribusiness management. From 2016, he has co-managed many different projects specializing in organic arable and vegetable cultivation in Flevoland in Netherlands. He's also a board member at BDECO, a local association of organic farmers, and a controller at Flevoland, overseeing large-scale organic crop production on over 1,000 hectares. He holds a master's degree in management, economics, and consumer studies from Wageningen University, where he specialized in management studies. His thesis examined strategic perspectives in Dutch arable farming, and he has a bachelor's degree in management and agribusiness. So, Roy, we're looking forward to hear and learn more about how strip cropping can be performed in such a large scale in an organic farm and still be profitable. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Stella. Thank you also for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Michielsen. I'm a farmer from the Netherlands, and I work for a farm which is called ERF, ERF. And our farm is located in the center of the Netherlands, in the red area, the red province Flevoland, which you see on the slide. And our farm is close located to big cities like Amsterdam. The area in which we operate is quite urbanized. We have an organic farm of 1,000 hectares. And the special thing of our farm is that we lease lands from the Dutch government, and those lands are prospective for urban expansion or nature development. Until the time that land is needed, we grow organic vegetables, arable crops on that land. It also so that means that well, the total hectares of our farm is declining every year a little bit. When the farmer started in 1996, it was we had more than 3,000 hectares, and it's declined now to 1,000 hectares. But still, for the Netherlands, that is a very large farm. And if you look at organic farms, we are by far the largest organic farm in the Netherlands. At our farm, we grow 15 different arable crops and vegetables. I will show you some of them on the next slide. The soils that we have are mainly clay soils with an organic matter of 4 to 6%. And what you see, and you see it maybe on the picture as well, is that the areas, the fields that we have that are large square fields of 30, 50 hectares at once. And that makes it really efficient for farming. Well, in our operation, we collaborate with a lot of other farmers. For example, with some dairy farmers, where we exchange, or I have to say, where we grow fodder crops for them and buy back their organic manure to apply on our lands. But also in the processing of our crops, we work together with some farmers. We have an own processing plant where we, for example, process our red beet. You see on the slide also some general information about the Netherlands. So we have an average rainfall of 850 millimeters of rain, and the average temperature per year is a little bit more than 10 degrees. And what you see as well is that we are part of a global network of lighthouse farms. That's a network of Wageningen University, in which are farms all over the world are connected to each other, and to exchange also practices and work on resilient farming systems. And now I hope that it is going to the next slide. Yes. So what you see on this slide is some of our products that we grow. You see cauliflower, but we also grow potatoes, pea, carrots, parsnip, Brussels sprouts, wheat, and red beet as well. And you see also some pictures of the processed products, the products that we process, like the red beet and also the parsnip, and those products are sold directly to the supermarket. And well, what we try to do at least is that the way of farming that we do that with the most modern and innovative techniques. Here you see some of the machines that we use. And you see a tractor with a seeding machine, which is equipped with GPS and also tracks, just to work as precise as possible. You see in the center the harvesting machine that we use for harvesting the potatoes and also the red beet. And at the bottom you see I think a robot tractor, an autonomous tractor, which we use since last year for some field work, and also at the right the machine that we use for harrowing. And what you see here is that, well, the machines that we use that are, well, sometimes that are big machines, we use them to work as efficient as possible. And yeah, it is for us also necessary to use this machine, but also in the cropping systems, there's also the strip cropping, on which I will talk a little bit more. It was very important that we still can use this machinery. Well, at our farm, we started since 2017 with a large-scale experiment of strip cropping. And what strip cropping is, you can see it on this photo, is that we grow crops in small strips. In our case, 6 meters, strips of 6 meters wide, rather than growing crops in large square plots, the so-called monocultures. And we try to do that in such a way that we can still use the same machinery as you can, which you saw on the previous slide, so that we also are able to achieve the same or the similar efficiency. There's one of the reasons that we choose to work with strips of 6 meters. But when we started with this experiment in 2017, we also experimented with strips of 12 meters and 24 meters. And on this picture, you see actually the different practices. So at the bottom, you see the strip cropping experiment with the different strip widths. You see small strips of 6 meters, but also strips of 12 and 24 meters. At the top, you see a field on which we apply strip cropping with only 6 meters or strips of 6 meters wide. And at the left, you see the current monocultural practice, so a large field, in this case of 60 hectares, which is divided into two crops of each 25 hectares. But you could ask why are we experimenting with strip cropping, and why do we want to shift from an simple but well-proven monocultural system to a more complex diversified system? And the reason is that although monoculture is very efficient, if you look, for example, to pests and diseases, that it is for us, especially as an organic farmer, very difficult if the field is affected by a disease, that it spreads very quickly and exponentially, very quickly throughout all over the field, and we cannot do anything about it. And what we see is that with strip cropping we are able to reduce the spreading, so it can only spread two ways, let's say vertically, but it cannot spread anymore the whole, in all the directions. And also, if you look at control in a large field, that can be very difficult, especially in the center of a field. After a winter, when there is no crop at our field, the beneficial insects like spiders, but also beetles, have to move from the edges of the field, where is a ditch or a hedge, to the center of the field, and that takes time. And in that time they cannot do their work on eating the bad insects. And if you change your design in a strip cropping field, in which some strips stay green, for example, the grass clover, then we are able to provide shelter possibility for those insects, and they can also do their beneficial work much quicker than in a monocultural system. Our aim is to test this system, but to realize, in the end, a stable yield, but also a more resilient cropping system. We tested this since 2017, and it is also monitored all those years by Wageningen University. And what we see is that the results are very promising. We see that we are able to achieve the same or even a better yield. We are able to have the same efficiency because we can use the same machinery that we use in the monoculture. We can use the machines in the strip cropping. We experience that we are less vulnerable for pests and diseases. In our case, for example, potato late blight. We experience that in the strip cropping system, we are infected less. And sometimes that makes that we can grow the potatoes 1 or 2 weeks longer than in a monocultural system. And what we experience as well is that we achieve more, or we have more biodiversity in our field. So we see more beetles, more spiders in the field, and also more in number, but also more in diversity. And what we experience as well is because, Stella was mentioning also that if you talk about more resilient systems, that it will affect yield. But in the way that we set up this experiment, we experienced that we are actually able to achieve the same yield and well, or sometimes even a better yield. And what we see now is that on average that we achieve a higher yield of around 500 euros per hectare. Yeah, that was actually my presentation. And on this slide, I put some links to web pages where you can find more information about our farm, but also about the strip cropping and also the global network of lighthouses. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Since I had the chance to actually visit the farm myself as part of the Lighthouse network, it was great to see this all in practice, and with small adaptations, as you mentioned, with the width of strip, you can do business as usual without, getting any complexity from this side. And just with some small training of your people, it makes your life much easier, and you can actually implement the system at such a large scale. So thank you for the presentation. And so now I'll move on to the second presenter, Professor Kizito from Uganda Christian University. She is a plant breeder and biotechnologist expert with extensive experience in agricultural innovation and sustainable food systems. She holds a PhD in plant breeding and biotechnology from the Swedish University of Agricultural Science. And she has multiple recognitions and publications focusing on development of zero energy vegetable growing technology and more. And she's the recipient of numerous awards, including the Ron Norman Fellowship that has been recognized for her contribution to agricultural science and women's leadership. So thank you so much, Professor, for being here. We'll look forward to learn more and hear your presentation. So the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Here we go. Is my presentation visible?
Not yet.
How about now?
No.
Let me know.
Yeah, can you try to share it again?
Yes, let me do that.
Yeah, now it's loading. Yes, we can see it.
That's it. All right, that's good. Thank you. Very privileged to be here this evening. Let me put it in a slideshow. I hope it's visible to you all.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you very much. My name is Elizabeth Kizito. I'm working as an associate professor at Uganda Christian University. I'm very privileged to be here and to talk about the African indigenous vegetables and a new realm that we have, especially in the future of agriculture. By way of background, I have one slide to talk about our university, which is a not-for-profit university and was established by the church. It was the first private university in Uganda to get a charter. We have about 11,000 students with 11 schools and faculties. I come from the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences. I wanted to start by giving a scenario where we find that in Africa, especially Eastern Africa, this is a place that is dominated by smallholder farmers, farming, and these are farms which are earning not more than $5,000 US annually. Actually, they may be earning far less. Most farmers grow their crops on not more than 1 hectare. So in comparison with Roy, this is another realm. And it's characterized by lower income, limited technology, market and certification barriers. And these farms suffer disproportionately from climate-induced damage and loss, especially as the climate crisis escalates. For instance, in Eastern Africa, it is projected that in the next, by 2080, we would have temperatures risen to by 3.9 degrees Celsius. And in Eastern Africa, specifically Uganda and towards the north, we shall be getting more rains than we do get today. And in the southern parts, it's projected to be drier. And as of now, at least Southern Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, they're experiencing one of the longest droughts. And the Victoria Falls have actually dried up. Whoever knew that such a mighty river can dry up? But here we are, and that's the scenario we have today. So that means that even our agroecological zones are shifting. How do we therefore prepare for such situations? And the biodiversity is one of the ways that can help us in this respect. Many of these, on these small farms, you find that many do grow indigenous species of crops. That's, you will find from the Solanaceae, you'll find from different species of crops. And in this sense, the farms are characterized by high levels of genetic diversity to reduce the risk, the sense of risk, because if your banana crop fails, maybe you get potato. If potato fails, maybe you get some cassava. They are highly variable, and it is the same also with the indigenous vegetables. They are usually a portion of the farm that is given to the indigenous vegetables. As a matter of fact, there is increasing interest and consumption patterns for these crops in Africa. We have documented in Uganda alone, in one of the common farmer markets, one of the big common farmer markets, you're having about 8 tons of these vegetables entering the market on a daily basis. So there's increasing interest for these vegetables. To note is that these vegetables are locally adapted to our growing conditions, and therefore they hold promise, especially when you talk of sustainability and when you're talking of equitable food systems. As a university, we have done many, we pride ourselves in the different the different areas we have been able to delve into to gain an understanding in these indigenous crops. I'll not go into the detail of this, but these bullets bring you a little bit of what we have been able to do, understanding the diversity, the diets, the characterization. One thing to note is that these vegetables are poorly researched. Actually, they fall in the category of neglected and underutilized species. Today, they are called opportunity crops. So as I want to go in, I want to delve into some of the things that we have been able to do as a university by way of understanding how we have been able to harness this kind of biodiversity for the sustainability of the farmers, and also for sustainability income, but as well food and nutrition security. We've been able to do studies, particularly in Uganda, to understand how much of this diversity is growing on a single farm. This is a paper we published some time back, and we find almost 13 different genus, species from 13 different genus. And this solanacea, you have pumpkin, you have amaranth, you have legumes, you have, you know, very many brassica, capsicum, chlorophytum, and all these are being consumed on these small-scale farms. To note, a typical diet on a small-scale farm will probably, most people will probably eat a meat once or twice a month. So that for the rest of the year, of the month, they are living on these vegetables. As a university, we've been able to look at how we can improve some of these vegetables in terms of their resilience for water use efficiency. How can we be able to grow them when we are getting drier or longer droughts? And one of the things that we do note is that because they've had limited research input in them, there's high level of variability. And therefore, as a breeder, this is a very important trait. It's very important because we are then able to make selections for the genotypes that we believe will be able to withstand drier or longer growing conditions. We've been able to therefore identify watering thresholds if there is need for irrigation in these vegetables. We've done a lot understanding the farmers, their perceptions, how we can improve because there's been limited input in here, understanding how they grow these vegetables, and actually listening to Roy speaking. Our farmers actually intercrop. They do a lot of mixed cropping. Of course, their production methods need to be improved. Their agronomic methods need to be improved. And so the top right, my cursor, you can see we do intervene in how to improve, especially their mixed cropping. We work with them to make selections. And I was mentioning to Janny earlier that we've learned a new approach now, how to work with them to improve their selections of the diversity that we have, picking from the university seed bank, but also the national gene banks. How do we preserve our seed? How do we make good selection for good seed? Different trainings in nutrition, and of course, how do we make crosses as we identify the superior genotypes? We have been able to understand better the demand for these vegetables and what it is in these vegetables that they prefer. And out of this, we've been able to release at least 3 different varieties. One of the common Solanum ethopicum vegetables is commonly called nakati, and this is what you're seeing here, nakati. These are now vegetables that you can find on the market with improved resilience, for example, to droughts, but also factoring in the preferences of the consumers. And in this way, because we work with farmers, we're able to share with them the different genotypes that we have. And then in that way, you improve how much more diversity they are able to keep on their farms and pick only what works with them, what works for them. We've looked into issues of post-harvest storage, post-harvest management. How do we come up with recommendations? Of course, there are still many areas where there's need for intervention. Looking at, for example, if you look at this 3rd picture here, you see a farmer explaining how he preserves his seed, but how can we improve and give them more hermetic methods of keeping the seed so that the viability of the seed can last longer? What I would like to conclude in on the basis of the overview of what we have been, how we've been working with our farmers and understanding our African indigenous systems, foods, and especially vegetables, we see that these vegetables are, these vegetables have actually, they hold greater promise in terms of enabling sustainability. For example, when the vegetables, the amount of money they are able to earn per acre is a lot more than, for example, one of the staple crops like maize. And remember, vegetables are harvested in, they're short growing crops, and therefore they're able to, they're able to be promoted as climate smart crops. Then they would be able to improve the nutrition in the household. They'll be able to earn from them. And particularly, we want to target the women and youth who constitute 80% of the people that grow these crops. And therefore, these are crops which we see would greatly target poverty alleviation. We see that they have low acreage requirements, and there's great opportunity for value addition. And given the changing consumption behavior, bigger markets coming up in the urban areas, it means that there is now more opportunity for these crops to be more beneficial to their farmers, to the farmers, but also to the consumers. The other thoughts that I would like to share at this point is that even as modern farming becomes more common, these indigenous vegetables remain an important issue in preserving biodiversity, because one, you never find monocrops on these farms. You will always find more than 1 or 3 or 4 different vegetables growing at any one time. And therefore, you can hit many birds with one stone, preserving biodiversity, ensuring food and income security, and also maintaining cultural identity. Because, you know, these are crops that have that have developed with the settlement of humans in the different spaces in Africa. I would like research support to strengthen the utilization and conservation of these genetic resources. Remember, they have not had much input in terms of research, and there's still a lot that would need to be done to build resilience and the adaptive capacity with the changing climate scenarios that we have. Some of the R&D partners would like to acknowledge, and I would like to thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting that you mentioned both the aspect of resilience for the profit of the farmer when he has multiple crops at the field, and that's also very important. And that you highlighted how important it is to learn from the farmers. Roy also is a live example of that, and facilitate how they can preserve these resources or how they can plant them in larger scale or use them. So we're hoping to learn a bit more about this information from our next presenter. So Dr. Janny van Beem from CropTrust. She is a Global Gene Bank Partnership Coordinator at the CropTrust, an organization dedicated to conserving and making available plant diversity. She holds a doctorate in plant breeding and genetics from Cornell University. And she's an expert in bean and wheat breeding, gene bank quality management, and she's currently involved in conservation activities with national gene banks in 30 countries. The purpose of the activities is to raise gene bank standards in support of a global system for the conservation of crop diversity. Dr. Beem, the floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you very much, Stella. Greetings, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Global Plant Council for inviting me. It's wonderful also to have Elizabeth and Roy on board. I think we provide a very good mix of different perspectives of the role and importance of biodiversity in agriculture. So just as a little background of who we are, let me see if I can get my next slide on there. Yes, the CropTrust. I work for the CropTrust. We are dedicated to conserving and making available crop diversity in the form that is conserved in gene banks for use globally, forever, and for the benefit of everyone. So that is our global mandate. We work with partners in gene banks to conserve crop diversity. Our biggest project right now is called BOLD. We have about 61 partners around the world whom in one form or another are benefited by either teachings or direct one-on-ones or workshops or procedures or travel or advice in their farms, in their gene banks, in their communities, in some way connected through this network. And it is very interesting to see how things are adopted and implemented. And so it's quite rewarding to work with a community that is this big. Our main contributors to all of this, of course, are governments and foundations. And we work with international agreement and policies which are backed by about 150 countries plus the EU around the world. One of the things that I did want to mention straight off is we work with underutilized crops. We have been working for a while under a project called BOLD Work Package 7. And there are three main objectives. The first is to securely conserve the diversity of underutilized crops. And that was mentioned very nicely by Elizabeth. And so what we do is we visit the banks, we find out what the needs are in that particular country. It's a very tailored system. And so it's not a one solution fits all because everybody has different forms of conserving, different things that they conserve, different challenges when they conserve seeds. Some seeds are easily conserved, some are not. So what are the different forms that we can conserve? So that is what we're doing in BOLD Work Package 7 right now. The use and value of news, for example, in sustainable agri-food systems is also improved. And lastly, we are trying to provide an environment that is supportive for the use of news by farmers and researchers alike. So this is to tie this part of our experience and our activities into the talk today because that concentrates on specifically looking at biodiversity that has not been exploited as of yet, at least not to the point that it could be. We believe that there are many more opportunities. So I'd like to go in my talk a little bit beyond the same talk that we always talk, and that is, biodiversity provides climate resilience, and it's great for plant breeding in the future because it's going to provide those genes. So let me take you through a few slides that also provide something that perhaps we're not highlighting enough, and I think it needs to be highlighted. Biodiversity does not only do those two things, provide climate resilience and plant breeding. It has critical roles in our ecosystem, as Roy previously said. He's shown evidence as to how things are changing by simply doing strip planting versus monoculture planting. And also, I'd like to talk a little bit about what it gives to us in our lives as well. So I think the first thing I'd like to mention is the fact that we have much healthier soils when we have a biodiversity. Diverse plant species, along with earthworms, fungi, microorganisms, they help nutrients come back into the soil and improves soil structure and fertility. And that, in the end, reduces the need for synthetic fertilizers. So we don't think of soils as being a direct benefit with biodiversity, but it is a huge thing. Soil is a very huge thing. And we kind of just look from the ground up, and we don't really look from the ground down what we're actually doing with our different cropping mechanisms and the different monocultures that we plant. So this is to say that, diverse plant species from ground cover, cover crops, to perennial plants, to annual plants, they do help soil erosion, they do help with stabilization, they do help with also the biodiversity underground, which is so important for our agriculture and our success, right? The second thing I'd like to say about biodiversity and ecosystems is also mentioned by Roy, but I think I'd like to delve into it with one example, and that is, for example, the control with pests and diseases. Fall armyworm, for example, which is a huge pest around the world, can be controlled by what's called push-pull companion cropping. So it's called push because it pushes away things that should not be there, and it's called pull because it pulls in new insects, for example, that can control the pests. So it's push-pull farming, if you will. And it is, the losses, for example, are about 10 times lower when you have push-pull farming than when you don't. And this doesn't involve displacing corn. It involves planting 1 or 2 or 3 or a few plants, around there that actually push the diseases and push the pests away while pulling the new ones in. So it's not a huge loss on the actual area that we're planting. It's more of a thought of how can we design this to be able to provide a more wholesome environment. Obviously, it reduces the need for chemical pesticides and it promotes a more eco-friendly, sustainable approach to agriculture. So it's just, I think it's changing that mind frame that we have to plant everything at the same time that looks the same, so it's more easy to harvest. But in actuality, we're doing ourselves some harm there in that we have to then put agrochemicals in there to control things. The third part, let me just go back. I think it skipped one. This part here is about pollinators. So we think of pollinators usually as bees and the collapse of bees that there have been recently because of unknown reasons. We say that it's because of chemicals, but we really do not know what is going with the decrease of particularly bees. But I think biodiversity in plants, particularly pollinators like butterflies and birds, is essential for pollination of many of our crops. So the presence of diverse range of pollinators increases crop yield, quality, and it supports the food security in a very sustainable way. And it also ensures that agricultural systems remain productive, even in the face of threats to specific species. And that was alluded by the previous speaker, where she says, if there was not a little corn, there will be a little cassava. And if there is not a little cassava, there will be some beans and plantains to harvest. And that is exactly the role of these pollinators, that if one of them collapses, there are other pollinators, diurnal, nocturnal pollinators, that will be able to provide us something to eat and therefore afford us food security in that way. So I'd like to talk about biodiversity in our lives, because we tend to talk about agriculture a lot, but I think a word or two about what it means to have enhanced nutrition due to biodiversity and dietary resilience, which are two very important aspects, I think. So a diverse diet contributes to essential macro and micronutrients, which can help combat malnutrition prevalent in many areas around our globe, particularly in regions that face food security. So I do think that exploring that biodiversity that is there, particularly, for example, underutilized crops, what is it that they have that provide a complete diet, that provide us with all the particularly micronutrients, zinc and iron and many other things that are very essential for life, but are not found in many of the things that we eat commonly since we have gone into modern agriculture. The other side of it is obviously the dietary resilience, which we've mentioned, and that is that agricultural biodiversity offers dietary resilience against the failure of monoculture crops by maintaining diverse agricultural systems. and in which communities can ensure a more stable and varied food supply. So biodiversity in our lives, we also do need to note that much of our health comes from plant. Nearly 40% of drugs behind the pharmacist's counter are derived from plants that people have cultivated for centuries, if not millennia. And including the top 20 best-selling prescription drugs. So we are very tied to plants in that way, which begs the question, where does the other 60% go? So if the 40% is something that we've already known for several centuries, the 60% is usually also coming from plants. There are other things like microorganisms and fungi and things like that, but that is by far the smallest portion of the medicinal resources that we use. So the other 60% still need to be and are currently being explored and should be a major part of what we look at when we look at biodiversity, is what is it that we're planting and how are we exploring the different benefits that plants bring us, not only as food, but also as medicine. And cultural enrichment. We've also lightly touched upon this. Many communities have deep connections with their agricultural biodiversity, and these connections form part of cultural practices, rituals, traditions. And I would not dispel this as saying, oh, this is a romantic notion. I think from what we're seeing today, from the youth today, that there's a huge importance in these practices, rituals, and traditions. I think there's a lot to be said about how biodiversity ties into who we are, what we treasure. And so I think it also needs to be brought into the equation, if you will, in the equation of what biodiversity brings in as well. I'd just like to note that there is a bank, a gene bank in the Netherlands, who is implementing a system that guarantees access to diverse, expertly conserved plant genetic resources to the current generation of users, while ensuring proper conservation for future generations of users, all with increased efficiency, reliability, transparency, and fiduciary responsibility. And I bring this up because I think this proposal that CGN has is one of the very few proposals that actually ties in 2 generations and says, or more generations, now and in the future. In the project, it says it's not just for now, it is for all of the legacy that we're leaving behind and what we're giving the next generation as a present for them to either have or solve. And so I think that that part of the legacy and the cultural enrichment should be a part of what we're talking about when we talk about biodiversity and its role in the future. So I'll leave you with a big question, and that is it our obligation as plant scientists? There were nearly 600 people signed up, of which I think 120, 130 have showed up. This is a large number of people, a very important group of people. So my question is our obligation as plant scientists, is it our obligation to preserve and promote agriculture, agricultural biodiversity? And if so, are we doing enough? Are we personally and as a group of plant scientists here, for example, in the Plant Council and with partners of CropTrust and other partners, are we really doing enough? So perhaps my plea would be to this group is perhaps we could do another talk where we actually say, have we done something of impact and where is it? How can we impact that, increase that impact, and perhaps apply what we learned to another area where biodiversity is not being conserved? And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Janny. Yeah, I will start to give her some time to try connect. I saw a question popping up a couple of times about for Roy. People are asking how you maintain the organic matter content in your soils. If you can give us some extra information about that.
Yes, I can give some information about that. So we apply different methods for that. So we apply organic manure to feed our soils, but also leave the crop residues in the field as organic matter. And we also apply how do you say it? A crop rotation of minimum of 8 crops. So one crop and it is a mixture of cash crops, but also I think rest crops or crops that give something back to the soil. And we also grow a lot of green manure or cover crops.
And it was very interesting when you let us know that in some cases you might do a crop rotation for the onion up to 8 years to control some of the pests. I had no idea that it has to last so long. And of course, as you mentioned, you take care of the nutrients in the soil too with this kind of rotation. So that's the benefit of having 8 crops.
Yeah, yeah.
So another question was for Roy, since you are unmuted and here. What percentage of efficiency does strip cropping have compared to monoculture? I think you mentioned that I guess the efficiency could be, related to the yields probably, but I would leave it up to you.
Yeah. So if what I mean with efficiency is let's say the number of hours or the cost that you have to make, and a lot of farmers or people think that strip cropping is less efficient, so that you need other machines or that it takes more time. And what we experience on our farm and in our experiment is that it is actually not the case, because since we can use the same machine, that it doesn't matter if you have to plant potatoes in a monocultural field or in a strip cropping field. You use the same machine, you drive the same speed. So in general, we say we have the same efficiency. There are some minor things like you have to plan a little bit more on front, so that takes a little bit more time. And there are still some practices like irrigation, which with the current machine is quite difficult in strip cropping. So that's why we say it is almost the same efficiency. If we look at crop yield, we see that we achieve at least the same yield, and we see even that we on average achieve a higher yield. That was the 500 euros that I mentioned, that on average we see that the crop yield is 500 euros more than in a monocultural system. And of course there are differences per crop. So for instance, onions is a crop that is not performing very well in a strip cropping system, but on the other hand, parsnip is performing very well.
Great, thank you so much. Isabel, you're here. Do you want me to continue?
Yes, I think it's the right thing to do, because I'm going through every now.
Okay.
Can be more dynamic if take over.
No worries.
As from
Gotcha. So for Janny van Beem, there's a question, couple of questions about the push-pull farming. I also find the strategy fascinating. People are asking how it can be applied in integrated pest management through the control for the armyworm, and what companion crops could be the best for corn.
Yeah, so the Kiel University has a couple of citations that I saw that have very good explanation of what push-pull farming is. So I would direct you to their website. They do have quite a bit of expertise, and I think their citations are very good. Their articles are very good in explaining. Desmodium is the species that is recommended to intercrop with corn, and because of some of the volatiles that they produce, it is quite known that those volatiles make the moths fly away from the corn because they do not like that at all. So, and there are a couple of species of Desmodium that they have tested and have worked really well. Parasitic wasps, which are actually the pull part of the farming, are the ones that are actually not affected by the smell of the Desmodium, and therefore they do parasitize the larvae of the fall worm that is already there. So you have double benefit. You have the pushing plus you have the pulling. But I think there are many other examples of that. This is just one that I took for fall armyworm, but there are other examples where that also happens.
Thank you. And my question is, have you experimented with how large should be the width of the companion crops, or where the place should be, where is the best result? It should be around the crop or also intercrop in some cases?
Yeah, I think both. It's around the crop. They tried around the crop. They tried intercropping, like the strips that Roy proposed as well. So there is no need to put so many of them, is what my sense was when I read from their research. So I think this is something that has to be tested with a particular crop, you know, and see what the amounts are. I mean, the interesting thing is they have done two types of research. They've researched it in the field, and they've also researched it in a lab, because to understand it, you need to be able to extract or find out what exactly is affecting the fall armyworm and its approach to the crop. And so this for me is quite good research, because it actually can tell me in a tunnel, if you're testing in a tunnel, what the chemicals are, what is it the chemical, you know, what is the chemical that's actually pushing the pest away, and what is the chemical that is actually pulling new ones in. So they have done that type of research. So I think it's best for whomever is interested to Google or go into a good site that says and talks about push pull, and see for their particular crop what the advice is. I don't know what crop they plant, so I wouldn't know whether it's a small amount. It depends on the crop, it depends on the pest, and it depends on the volatile compound produced by the companion crop.
Yeah, makes total sense. Another interesting question that we have here is, you mentioned about the gene banks and how important it is to preserve all this biodiversity. The question is, who owns this very valuable biodiversity?
Yeah, very good question, actually. There are two different answers for that. One answer with two different ownerships. International banks, which are banks that have been sort of categorized by FAO to be belonging to humanity, those belong to all of us. So those, you can ask for things, you will receive an agreement for transfer when you receive material, but those are available for everybody. And those would be the big banks, for example, like CIMMYT, CIAT, IITA in Africa, and so forth. So there are currently 10 banks that way, and maybe some other ones. So there are also other international banks, like for example, World Veg. Their material is available to everybody, and it's deemed Article 15 international banks, right? They've been placed in trust for FAO to overlook and manage as international. So that is that part of the ownership. So there's international banks. There are also national banks. So every country has their own gene bank where they collect within their country and they place things under their own gene bank. The sovereignty of those materials belongs to the country that manages that gene bank. So they are sovereign over those materials, and they have their own transfer agreements for that. So we work with both modalities. We fund international gene banks as well as national gene banks so that they're able to collect, conserve, and safety duplicate their materials.
Thank you. And except to the example of the gene bank in the Netherlands that you mentioned that currently also can provide to the farmers some of this material to cultivate, are there other gene banks that farmers can, reach out and experiment with either indigenous or wild relatives of the crops?
Yes. There is a global platform for everybody looking for all accessions conserved. And it's called Genesis PGR. If you want, I can place it here in the chat. I can place the link right after maybe I finish this question.
Yes.
It's called Genesis PGR, and the gene banks, national and international, have been uploading all their accessions there. So if you're interested in an accession, that's where you would find it. That's where you would find it. And they have a cart where you can actually order. If you put it in the cart, that cart contacts the gene bank, and the gene bank then contacts you, and you are able to obtain that material. So there is that one agreement that we all have, all gene banks have, and that's let's have one platform. Of course, there are also, each gene bank also has their own website where you can actually order directly. But in all likelihood, that gene bank also has joined Genesis PGR, and that's where they would do the ordering mechanism and obtain their accessions.
Thank you so much. And I think the link could be quite useful for many.
I'll put it in there, yeah.
Thanks. And I had chosen a couple of questions for Elizabeth, but I've seen she's been quite active actually answering them online. But I would love to have your input also verbally. Elizabeth, if you want, since you have already answered these questions, to choose a couple of them to give us your insight.
Sorry, you've asked me to choose anyone to
Yes,
respond to?
you have answered 3 or 4. Please feel free to elaborate in a couple of them so everybody can access, can hear your answer and your insights.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I need to. One of the questions that was asked of me, scroll up. Oh, okay. I don't seem to remember which one particular, but I saw a question which was talking about value chains, that they need to be stimulated for conservation to happen. And I just want to agree with that one person who did post that. The truth is that when there's no sufficient trade or sufficient when there's no demand per se for a crop, and that crop can easily die out, for example, when hit by a catastrophe, for example, and that's why there is great value in conserving in gene banks, because in the event of a catastrophe, then there is a backup somewhere. There's a backup somewhere, but that is one thing that I do not. Of the 13 different genera that I did present, of the indigenous crops that are being consumed in Uganda, not all of them they don't have equal demand. Some of them have bigger than the others, and then that calls for, that creates the demand, and then more farmers grow more of, and people look for that seed, and those that have less demand, not meaning that they are not important, they're actually very important, but there's need to stimulate that kind of value chain development, and so that we don't lose out on our crop diversity. And Janny has well explained how we can access those rare ones, but yes, somebody did mention that the knowledge about these vegetables seems to be domiciled in older generations, and somehow it is losing out. I would not exactly, and they actually mentioned that though there are some few younger people who have interest, and I think that is the important thing, that at least there be 1, 2, or 3 who still have interest in that, because as long as there's interest, the crop will be grown. And in that sense, more of that diversity will be maintained, especially on farm. The greatest place to have our diversity conserved is when it is on farm, because then it is being challenged by the current climatic conditions, and whatever is able to adapt moves to the next generation, and in that sense it gets conserved. One thing to note, especially coming from Janny's presentation, as more of these crops are now being demanded, and so the crops are being commercially produced, and now new challenges come in, pests and diseases. That creates now a new front in terms of maintaining of this of these crops, and then as such, the production systems of these crops need to be more needs to be done to improve how the farmers are producing these crops, so that you're maintaining the beneficial insects, for example, and limiting the harmful ones, the pests, so that you're limiting the spread of diseases. And yeah, I think that's what I would want to add to. I don't remember which other questions I did answer, but yeah, they're in the chat. Yes, thank you.
Yes, another one that it's interesting to elaborate a bit more is that both of you, both Janny and Isabel, you were talking about underutilized crops and how important they are, and of course indigenous species. Do you have some examples of them that could actually be part of the market in the next years to be opportunity crops? That more and more farmers will use and cultivate. And my follow-up question, open for all presenters, is where do you think we should start raising awareness to the farmers about the benefits of cultivating and maintaining these crops, or to the market so you have the demand and more farmers feel safe to start cultivating them? So Elizabeth, which crops you think could actually make pass to the market and be these opportunity crops in the future of these indigenous vegetables that you're working with?
Yes, I see that crops which have, as populations tend to homogenize as they move towards the urban areas, then the markets become more specific about what they need. And then you find there are specific crops that get into demand because they're meeting specific needs. So as such, you find that there are crops which are more common to a wider population or a wider diversity of people. Crops like pumpkin are well known all over, because some of these crops are really specific to a culture. Not all cultures consume the crops as they are. So, but crops which have a wider usability across cultures tend to have greater demand. You have the cucurbitaceae, the pumpkin. You have in Uganda we have amaranthus. I do know that it's also widely consumed in other parts of Africa, and that would be a best place to start, because then where you have demand, then there will be need to grow more of the same. But so you don't lose out. You don't lose out on the niche crops, those that are specially to specific cultures. It would do well to do a lot more of raising awareness of the benefits, so people understand what they're losing or what they are missing when they don't eat these vegetables, which are very easy to grow actually in our ecosystem. So having more of awareness is a very important, raising more awareness would also increase demand for the current popular indigenous vegetables, but also create the interest to maintain the others that are not as popular. But they still do have their niche markets, and they still find their way to the markets. And in that sense, that means that the diversity will be maintained. Yeah.
Thank you.
I
think
have a
Roy.
question
Yes.
for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I seem to remember that Uganda has actually determined and made policy that seeds in community banks and farmer seeds must be now saved. I'm trying to look for the article, but I did not find it actually. But I believe that answering Stella's question is, where should it be? Where should that policy be? Where should that direction be? Where should the activities be aimed? I think that what Uganda, if that is indeed where it is, I believe it is, Uganda's policy saying everything conserved right now in farmer, community seed should be conserved in the National Gene Bank, and it should be backed up either in Svalbard or some near, there should be a backup, because we don't know what's coming. Climate change is upon us, and we do need to have these seeds, that have diverse sort of adaptation to the coming conditions, but also culturally tied and nutritionally tied. So was it Uganda that actually had that policy? I'm trying to look for the article that showed up recently, but I think that's brilliant. For example, that top government actually determines, what needs to be done at the very, very level of a community bank or a center. That is the way to go, I think, in response to Stella's question. Where do we target it?
Yes, actually, one of the questions that I responded to was in that sense, yes, that the nations need to take interest in their diversity. The current government policy is to diversify and introduce non-traditional cash crops into the money economy. And in that sense, it means that whatever you're able to convert into cash, and if it will, it should be promoted in that sense. So it doesn't limit that you should only have this or the other. And it is true that it has, the government through the National Agricultural Research Organization has promoted a lot of community seed banks. So that means that within communities, farmers are able to preserve, whether in field, that would be in situ, or in their community seed bank, the crops that are important to them. And when you need to grow any one of them, you grow, and you bring back twice the amount. So if you take 200 grams, you bring back 400 grams because somebody else will need. And in that sense, they're encouraging the conservation of these indigenous crops. Yes, I think they're over maybe coming to 50 different community seed banks, and they serve quite a large area of community. But I guess we need more and more of these, because some are quite far and they're not easily accessible. But it's a good starting point that within your community, at least you can reach a seed bank where you would be able to pick a rare species that you think you would like to grow for yourself. Yeah, it is a policy to diversify.
I think that's brilliant.
However, there is need to, what I would say, in most of our national policies, there's need to streamline and prioritize even opportunity crops within the priority crops which are funded for research. So you find that there's a lack of information, especially if you want to, if you've never grown the crop, how should I grow it? there's just no information because there's no research that has been committed to this. Most of the research tends to be committed to food crops, maize, beans, banana, cassava, and which are always eaten with these crops anyway. So that's the irony. You have the food, but what goes with it is what is not really. But yeah, there's need in each of our countries, respective countries, there's need to prioritize and bring higher up on the rank funding that would support promotion of these crops. In that sense, then you have more promotion of that crop because many more people can grow. Many more people will have access to seed and that the seed will be available. That is still one of the major challenges facing those that need to grow these crops.
That's true. And my last question that you also a bit touched is the part of the training and the education. So it's important when, I guess, you collect an indigenous vegetable to take information from the farmers that used to cultivate it or how they did it, maybe what pests they've seen in the crop. And also if someone is interested to cultivate one of these crops in the gene banks, to be able to maybe take a manual with it, with the information and the step-by-step cultivation guide. So there is a need for documentation of this knowledge, and also, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, extra research to have this more structured information for the farmers. I think we're...
Yes, that's indeed.
Yeah. Isabel, I think we're on time. Would you like to add something? There are still quite a lot of questions that we didn't manage to answer, but I think we will give it a try after the meeting to answer internally or reach directly to the presenters to do so and communicate the answers to the participants and the attendees.
Yes, we can do that. We can share the questions with the speakers, and I think we can manage later on to share the answers in some way. We have done it before,
Yes.
So we can repeat. And thank you so much to everyone. Sorry for the inconvenience because I was going on and off. But thank you everyone for staying for the very end and for attending this webinar. Thank you so much to the attendees and very especially to the speakers. Thank you, Stella and Wikifarmer, for organizing this jointly. And we will send in the coming days the recording. I will check the recording. I hope either the YouTube version of the Zoom version will be complete, and if not, I will manage something. But you will get a recording of this meeting, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. We will have, as I said, we will host another webinar this month on the 25th, and I will share the information as well with you in a upcoming email. That's all. Stella, do you want to add some last words?
Yeah, I also wanted to thank everybody. I think it's very interesting to have such a diverse panel of speakers, having a great understanding of the sector and how biodiversity works and should be protected and reused. So thank you all for your insights. And yeah, we look forward to have more insights of your work and promote it also through Wikifarmer with articles to reach more and more people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Also, thank you.
Thank you, Anzara.
Have a nice afternoon, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye.